Hey, welcome back to Talent Thrives Here, our podcast where we talk to talented people, managers, and people out there managing other people. Today, Brandon Gano is with me. Brandon's from the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lance. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you on the show. Can you tell our audience what you do? What is your business about, and who do you serve, and a little bit more about your individual work?
Yeah, absolutely. So business name is Whadif, because we are fractional COOs at heart, and we just believe that any change that's going to come out has got to start with that question. What if? What if I do this? What if we did that? So that's really the foundation of our business is asking better questions in order to grow a business. So who do we serve? We serve the 7, 8 figure entrepreneurs and companies. Our real sweet spot is like 5 to 50 employees, where the business owner or founder is just a little bit too involved. Maybe some of you out there listening could resonate with that. I'm trying to be politically correct, but we get the owners out of the operations in 90 days or less, and then we help those companies scale to really whatever heights they want to go to. We have a proprietary business architecture that we install in our clients, and we call ourselves the lazy consultants. So we focus on doing as little as possible so that you can grow your company as quickly as possible. And we want you to be lazy too, because it's more fun that way.
That's great. I can think of a few presidents and be like, no, no, don't use that word lazy. That's yeah. All right, cool. So Brandon, here's like a question for you. The industry I work in, like my main niche has been entertainment for a long time, and that's everything from advertising, marketing, AR, VR, video games, film, animation, anything with digital production content. And a lot of it has shifted dramatically in the last few years as the tech changes and the software changes. Um, but a fair number of our clients are in that movie making or television broadcast world and have been greatly affected last year by the strikes in Hollywood, but more so, I think, by a shift in where their audience is going and also what's happened with streaming versus cable. And not to do a whole TED talk on what happened in my industry, but the long story short is a lot has changed. And a lot of people got displaced last year, and they're still not back to work yet. The industry hasn't bounced back. And much like myself, I'm an entrepreneur. I run a small company. We consult with lots of different companies, but I've tried to put that bug in there, a few of their ears, like, hey, start building your own IP, get together with a few friends and build a consulting project, something, whether it be a cartoon, anything, or coaching business or teaching or so I'm just curious if you could give some insights or possibly some coaching tips to folks like that. They've had maybe been in one industry for a long time, let's say 10 or more years, and the work's been relatively steady. But now they're sitting in a spot where the work might not be coming back for another 6 or 12 months. We don't really know. And so what do they do at that time, and how do they get creative about, pivoting at this point? Any thoughts on that, Brian?
Yeah, first thing I would say is depending on how much you have in reserves, in savings, if you're thinking it's going to be 6 to 12 months, go to Mexico and drink some beers on the beach. I think that would be the best thing for everybody. Assuming that's not the case, though, here's what I see all the time, which I do not advise. There, if you go on any social media platform, you scroll for 3 seconds, you're gonna see an ad about how to make money quick, or you're gonna see somebody posting about how to make money quickly. The first thing I need you to ask yourself is, am I doing something because I want the money or I need the money? Or am I doing something because I'm passionate about it and I want to make an impact? I
Mm-hmm.
don't help people. We don't help people who want money. You will get money if you chase impact. If you chase money, you'll get nothing and be disappointed. So before you take any path, evaluate that. And then the next thing you have to understand is anytime you are in the world of entrepreneurship, business ownership, whatever we want to call it, there is a business component to anything you're doing. You can't just go out and do the same thing you did in your job function, in your W-2 role, or even a 1099 capacity, and think you will have immediate success. There are forces at play in business that you need to have a good handle on and understand how they work before you take that leap. So maybe not the answer some people want to hear, but business is hard. There's no sugarcoating that. You
Right.
have to understand how to make money and where that money goes and how to grow a company, even if you're just a solopreneur. So that's kind of my caution at first.
Yeah, no, no, that's very good points. Because to your point exactly, there's a million things on Facebook saying shiny object,
Mhm.
squirrel, whatever you want to call it, and it's all about make money quick. But for a lot of people, if their passion isn't there, if they really don't want to do this, they might be able to do it for a while, but then they drop their interest, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, this is just a grind. This is just, I don't really want to get up in the morning. It doesn't fire them up in the morning. Like, so that's very good points. And is there somewhere in the marketplace right now you see either lots of growth or lots of industry activity? Because people always ask me, I say, look, I'm not interested in pharmaceutical, but people are always sick. There's always drugs. There's always some sort of marketing to do with. I used to occasionally we get a pharmaceutical marketing company years ago that would need recruiting, and it wasn't really our niche, but we would play in it for a while and learn a ton of stuff. Um, but again, it didn't appeal to me. It didn't get me out of bed in the morning. Like, oh boy, I got to go find some new pharma reps this morning. It didn't speak to me. But that's stable. I think the tech industry will probably recover, but it's going through massive change right now. And what we've seen in our business, usually one silo will go down, but the others will be healthy. This round, in the last year and a half, everything went down. VFX, animation, video games. It was like a perfect storm, and tech at the same time. So, because sometimes the engineers that are working in one silo could bounce to another for a while if it got quiet. But it almost seems like there's nowhere to hide right now. And I do think there'll be a rebound year of next year, maybe, but it hasn't really hit yet. So again, back to you, Brandon, if there's any areas you see with your client mix that are either in growth mode or they're at least very healthy, is there any points around that?
This is going to sound so arrogant, but I'm going to say it anyway, with as much humility as possible. The opportunities where you make it, and we work with our clients. All of our clients are growing, and
Yeah.
they're always growing because we focus on creating the right opportunities. So by that, I don't mean, if you're a tech business, you switch to a pharmaceutical business just to chase opportunity. No, I'm definitely not saying that. But what we do is we really hone in who the company is and who they serve when we start working with them. And from there, we can always make pivots or shifts and tweak, adapt to the marketplace. So if tech, let's say, is in a decline, we need to figure out first, go back like 10 steps. Who's your customer? What
Mm.
do they need from you right now? Let's talk to them. Let's figure out what they need, and then we'll adapt accordingly. So it's never, looking at it from the outside and saying our industry is in decline, because
Mm.
you could technically make that argument depending on who you talk to at all times. There is
Right.
some business in decline in some industry, and there's
Yeah.
some business who is thriving. So when we kind of evaluate that process, we have our key metrics within all of our clients' companies, and we say what's working, what's not, where do we need to shift. Once we
Mm.
do that and we know who we serve, we know how to shift,
Yeah.
and then we can attack things that way. So I don't like to get caught up in the external forces because you can't control those. You can't
No,
control
no.
what the stock
Yeah.
market's doing. So
Yeah.
you need to react to your business and your customers and just make sure you're set up to pivot, adapt, and then scale from there.
Yeah. It reminds me of, the newspaper business back in the 80s and 90s. Everyone said print is dead. And we've been hearing print is dead for decades, and print just shifted. It's now,
Yes.
blogs and it's online and there's me. It did definitely change the way print was made because it's now no longer, millions of people running a press all day long, putting out newspaper. And, you know, I don't even know who, when I was a kid, I was the newspaper delivery guy in the mornings, and in the winter I'd have a toboggan full of newspapers, be dragging it through the snow to drop off their morning. And if I was late, people are pissed because, they'd have their morning coffee, read the news, and then go to work. We didn't have cell phones when I was a kid. It didn't exist yet, right? So you couldn't get this instant update on anything. The newspaper was kind of critical, or the radio to start your day. For some people, right? Some people didn't read the newspaper anyways. But again, like, I digress. It's definitely an industry that's changed dramatically. News and communication is, it's completely unlike anything we knew. So I'm curious. Going back for a second, is there an area or a sweet spot for you? You mentioned 5 to 50 employees. But is there a place, even a case study that you've done in the last few years that were like, here's where we sung, here's where it was this perfect sweet spot, the mix of X, Y, and Z combined with ours made the whole alphabet or something like that. Is there anything you could tell me about, where you hit one out of the park and this client is still dancing on top of the rooftop singing your praises?
Yeah, I'll give you one. It's one of my favorite examples, and it's actually a current client who we've been working with for a very long time. When we met originally, and this is actually a very common story, but it shocked me the first time I heard it. I said, what do you do? How'd you kind of get here? And they said to me, they were like, well, I have this company and I have about 45 employees. We're doing so and so in revenue, a couple million in revenue. And I kind of feel like I grew this company by accident. And I don't really know how to run my business. And I was like, hold up, just 1 second. You kind of glossed over a really important sentence there. What does that mean? So that's what happens to most small business owners is they get into business because they're passionate about the service or the product or dealing with the customers. It takes off. So again, back to the passion part. That's the core. If they have that passion and it grows by itself, that's fantastic. But then there's that business aspect that I talked about. So when we got in, we kind of looked at everything, the financials, the operations, all the things that are involved that a COO would touch. And we said, okay, there's some cleanup to do for sure. So we clean up the operations. We totally rework the company's navigation, which is what we call the mission, vision, core values, to make sure the company's aligned and going in the right direction. And then we kind of hit a plateau, and we're like, what's going on here? So it turns out that the owner of the company, they tend to be the bottleneck. And in this particular scenario, it wasn't a matter of skill. It wasn't even a mindset thing. It was a fear of saying, I've never gone here. I don't know what that looks like in my life. So that's when we kind of took a step back. This was a number of months ago. And we said, what do we need to do to make sure that the people are never in the way of growing the company? Because the common approach, and I'm sure you could speak to this to some degree, is you fire the people and you get new ones. I personally don't love that approach. And I don't think it's a very ethical approach. I know a lot of people do that, but I heard somebody say one time, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, that the people in the room at 1 million in revenue will not be there at 10. The 10 will not be there at 25, and so on. And I said, that is the biggest lie I've ever heard, because if you're saying someone could be in the room at $100 million, why can't we fix that person at 1 and get them there? So that kind of opened my mind to explore. And ultimately what happened was we made this partnership with a friend of mine and another fantastic company where they only specialize people, and we optimize. They optimize people. We optimize businesses. We married our two services together, and we are literally unstoppable at this point. We do not have a company that slows down, because they understand, what do we need to do to make the people so tied to their business and the roles that they love coming to work. Our retention rates are through the roof. Our profitability is through the roof. Our turnover rates are next to zero. And we build cultures that actually thrive and survive in any market condition. So that's one example that's actually very common for us now, which we're very proud of, because we don't want to hurt people and let people go if we don't have to.
Right. Excellent. It reminded me, when you're saying that, of a friend of mine. He recently retired, sold his shares in a business. He ran a very successful engineering company, but he didn't come in as the owner. He came in as a junior years ago, but they had a profit sharing plan. And eventually, as the company grew, he became the president, and he kind of springboarded this idea where they would have 10 partners. And at the outset, they were like, "Oh, this is going to be a nightmare." But they built an internal structure where that he said basically there was a component of everybody's revenue that was shared, a pool. So if you wanted a raise, go get more business, bring it in, and the lion's share would go to your team and your division, but a small percentage gets shared. So he said basically 1 or 2 of the guys might be really struggling, but they're still getting a trickle off everyone else's business. And he said, if you wanted to retire, you could slowly start selling your customers to the other partners. So the ones that wanted to take on the business, and they knew the business. Anyway, long story short, he was there for about 30 years, retired. And he kept one client. They were allowed to keep a client, so he keeps a client, does some part-time consulting work with that client. But he said it took out all the whining, and because people are like, I want a promotion, I want a raise. No, this is an entrepreneurial culture. This is a meritocracy. So if you want to bring in business and we all work on it together, we're up for that. If you want to raise, go bring in more business. It was very much, spurred on the idea that new business floats all of us. And so, not a lot of corporate structures are set up that way, but I thought for a small company, they were, I think, less than 35 or so people. They had contractors that they worked with as well. But the core group was 10 individuals. And they built a, board that was able to manage all sorts of things and mitigate some of the internal fighting and all that sort of stuff to keep a fairly well-oiled ship. But it begs my mind that, a lot of other companies could learn from that. Build something where there's a cooperative element, people can grow. And, to your point, Brandon, about who's in the room at 1 million versus 10 million and 20 million. If the company continually builds a platform where a person can continually grow with the company and learn more, I've seen people have been in a company 25, 30 years. And I say, why'd you stay? And they say, well, they kept putting a new carrot in front of me or a new interesting role. And so I could leave for another role or I could stay for another role. Why would I leave? I know these people, I know the infrastructure, I know how the place ticks. So I think, the onus is on a lot of companies to, if they can, build succession plans for people, build a progress ramp so that people can grow up with the company. And when it gets to that point where it's, going through a next phase of growth, you don't lose all that competitive intelligence. You don't lose the infrastructure that you had. And some companies will. They'll be like, that's old guard. We got to get rid of the old guard because they're still trying to do it the old way. I've seen that in usually if big telcos merge or big airlines merge, there's a lot of case studies on it. It takes years for them to build a new culture because you might have 2 or 3 microcultures fighting for, we do it this way. And this is the way we've always done it, right? And there's The Bear, I don't know if you've seen it, it's on Disney Plus. It's a show about a brother who inherits his dead brother's restaurant. And the first couple episodes are all the line cooks going, we stick with the process, and he's trying to build a whole new process. So it's a I don't know, really, really great show right now. And especially if you like food, there's a lot of gratuitous, beautiful food shots of them prepping different meals, but I digress. It's really about a shift in culture and a shift in methodology. And slowly, I don't want to spoil the show, but it's this wonderful transition that occurs as the show evolves. But it speaks very much to what we're talking about. How do I motivate an older employee that's been there before under a different ruler, a different management team to learn the new ways? How do I respect them? How do I show them respect? How do I build a place where they have the ability to bring something new and learn something new? Because I think for a lot of us, being acknowledged, being seen is important, and feeling that what we're doing is actually part of a community and it's beneficial, right? Because if it's not, I think a lot of us go, what am I here for? Right? What am I just bumping around? Unless you want to hide, but I don't think, does that resonate well with you, Brandon?
Yeah, you said a couple of things that we could probably go down like 7 rabbit holes, and this would be a 3.
Yeah.
So let me tell you the number one reason why people probably want to cancel me on the internet. And it stems from what we're talking about here. There's this whole push to have cultures and workplaces that are inclusive.
Right.
I firmly believe culture should be exclusive. What I mean by that is when cultures are always built either intentionally or by accident. When they're inclusive, they are built by accident, and you will not like the results. When they're exclusive, when you have a team of people who are diverse thinkers, they have different ideas, but they're on the same unified mission and vision, it excludes everybody who's not a good fit. And by that, I mean, when you just said, if people want to go into a company and hide, that should not work in your company. You should not have people that want to hide. Back to the other example with your friend with the 10 partners, it sounds like that company had a culture that promoted when the company wins, you win. So that should be everybody's mindset. If I help the company win, I help me win, and I help my coworkers and my team win. That
Mm,
is fantastic. You can't have hiders in that culture, because what
yeah,
happens is
yeah,
they'll start to sit in the back and reap the rewards of doing nothing, and it
right.
eats away at everybody else who's working hard.
Yeah.
So I really, really disagree with this whole inclusivity movement,
Mm,
because
mm,
it promotes, even though I call us the lazy consultants, it promotes laziness in a bad way. It promotes
right.
doing nothing and still the participation model and still winning and getting rewarded. So cancel me if you may, but we get real results with our clients because
Yeah.
we want to build cultures where people want to be a part of them. They don't want to go home and just waste their life away.
No, it's a very interesting topic because in my mind, I think when I was a kid growing up, when I was in university, Chicago Bulls, right? Michael Jordan, that was an era of time where Chicago was slaughtering, even the Knicks and everybody out there. They were like Michael Jordan was the guy to beat. And if you read anything and watch the biographies on him, and he, to your point, had a very exclusive mindset, and it was his way or the highway. And he gathered like people around him that supported his vision, and the coach did as well. But so much so that he disappeared for a while and then came back to the team. And other players were like, "I'm not getting on the floor and practicing if Michael's back. I'm out." Like there was a culture. And there
Mhm.
was a way of doing the thing that he wanted to do. And if he was on the floor and you deviated from that, you felt the wrath of that guy, right? And so it's a little bit of hyperbolic in the way he did his thing, but they won championship rings, right? They were on fire for a while there. And I think in business, in some cultures, that will be the same thing. To your point, it's like, here's what we're doing, here's our mission, here's our values. If you don't align with it, please don't take an offer from us, right? Please don't come in here and expect anything else. But it has to be not only that. I mean, part of my business consulting has been, are those mission and values actually being lived? Because if they're not, they're just stupid things on a wall.
Mhm.
And um, it's really, and you've seen it, I've seen it. It's bad news for a company when they've written all this stuff and said, this is our new cheer, and they don't live those values, because then there's a huge disconnect through the whole place. And people quit. They're like, I came here for the thing you sold me, and there was all this great sizzle, but there's no steak underneath the sizzle.
Fails
So
everything. Yep.
yeah, you guys are, profanity, profanity, profanity. I'm out. I left my other job to come here under these premises, and you guys are full of smoke.
Yep.
So I mean, that's we did an ebook on that a while back too, about employer branding being BS. Like, if you're not living those values, don't promote them. I literally remember being at a company where they went through a reorg, had a bunch of consultants come in, do a branding thing, and all sorts of stuff was impacting the business. And then there were posters put up everywhere all over the place, like, here's our new thing. And then they did communication meetings to town halls so they were doing all of the right things. um, but I distinctly remember a senior employee walking by my office one morning shaking his head, and I said, what? And he said, that stuff on the wall is the end of us. And I'm like, what do you mean? He just said, a lot of profanity. He just said that I don't think they actually are those things, but they're trying to make us believe it. And so, he was clearly not buying the message. And I wondered how many other folks, there were thousands of people at that company. I wonder how many others were shaking their head too, quietly, going, this will never work. So I really felt there was a moment there where they have to now reinforce those values and show that they're living those values and continually talk about those values and mirror them. A friend of mine worked at one of the big cereal companies in the States. And she said they had, they called this will probably give it away, the 5Ks. And they were talking points in meetings, but one of them was, respectfully, you can steal an idea from someone else in the company, make it your own, but you have to always remind everyone who came up with the idea. So, because they said, like, people get really pissy. Oh, that was my idea. No, I credited you. And because they said, the idea might have been great, but the timing was wrong. But rather than sandbag the idea over politics or whoever said it, say, Bob had this amazing idea 2 years ago. It didn't work at the time, but I'd like to put it back on the table for discussion. Now, Bob hears that he's been credited, so he's the hero still. But if the idea was has merit, you can pull it up and possibly, and 3M is another one. They have this thing where, I can't remember, years ago, I think they used to call it like Rebel Friday, where they incentivized you with a half day on Friday to find, similar to what I just said about this 5K thing, find an idea that got shot down or maybe got through 3 gates and then got slaughtered by timing, politics, whatever. But they incentivize the employees and the engineers to get a pet project, but don't let your supervisor know about it. They're literally taking a bunch of engineers who are, often probably not allowed to be unbelievably outside the box. And they're saying, here's the box on a Friday afternoon, please break it. And so why am I going to stay at 3M? Because they allow me these rebel hours every week where I can take a pet project on my own time, on their dime, and see if I can get it up the ramp again, right? And so it's, research and development at a lot of companies should be something like, 5 to 10% at least per month per employee. And I think that helps if people get these ideas that it doesn't always have to be your boss's idea. Mm-hmm. And he or she should champion it when you bring it to them if they like it and go, yeah, absolutely, let's get behind this. And let's credit the people that did it. Because that's the other thing I've seen in some companies, you probably have too, Brandon. They don't want to bring it forward because they know their boss is going to steal the idea. Yeah. Or the boss won't present the idea, it's going to get shut down. And they're like, I'm not even going to try. So I think companies have to be aware, you mentioned it too, the roadblock in some smaller companies is that person who started it, the entrepreneur. They've got to be very transparent, very self-aware, and have the ability to understand that, I think of Microsoft all the time. If they saw a really good company with great tech and great people, rather than fight them, they would buy them, right? They just bring them in. And Bill Gates said that 100 million years ago, like, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting kind of leadership tactic because, again, some people have an ego or an ability to believe that they must be the smartest person in the room. And I think that stagnates growth a lot of time, right? You really need to surround yourself with people and know that great idea could come from anybody on the team. And then it's how to nurture those folks to do more. You've probably heard a lot about servant leadership, right? How do I bring the team up?
Unchecked ego is the source of the problem there. It's an unchecked ego with probably some sort of an imposter syndrome underlying, because they think that they have to prove that they're the smartest. Bill Gates, Bezos, I don't want to throw Elon Musk in there. I'm just not too sure, but they surround themselves with the smartest people because they understand that if you build that culture, good things will come from it. When the owner's in the way, it's because they have to prove something that's just not true. So that's where it comes from.
Great. Look, I'm conscious of the time, Brandon. If people want to find you, they can find you obviously on Brandon Gano at LinkedIn, and your website is at Whadif, but it's WHADIF, right?
Yeah, it's whadif.com. So I would say go there. If you have a business and it's operational, go there. What you're going to find is our 8-minute instant clarity assessment. And we didn't really get into this today, but it's going to reveal exactly where your business is. And it shows up on our proprietary architecture. So we'll tell you exactly where the weaknesses are, where the strengths are, what you can leverage, so that if you are the entrepreneur that's maybe the bottleneck in the company, I'm being nice, you can figure out exactly how to get over it, and then how to put the right people in place and grow your company within that 90-day period. So everything we do there it's not a funnel designed to get you to upgrade to some course or some BS. No, it's literally just, we want to help as many people as possible. Should you want us to hold your hand through the process, you do have to pay for that. But that's a totally separate conversation. Go there first, get the assessment, see where your company could be in 90 days.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. Hopefully we can connect. I'm sure, like you said, we there's a bunch of rabbit holes we could have gone down. So hopefully we can connect later in the year and maybe have a chapter 2 on this.
If I'm not canceled by then, but yeah, let's make it happen.
All right. Take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.